One of my absolute favorite guitar players from the 70s was a gentleman by the name of Tony Iommi, who played with Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath was absolutely life-changing for me as a kid because, I grew up listening to the stuff my parents listened to was, the Beatles and, the Monkees and, all kinds of things like that, which were awesome. But I was introduced to Sabbath by a friend of mine when I was a kid, and just those heavy power chord riffs and the single note ideas and all that just kind of changed the way I thought about guitar playing and thought about music in general for the rest of my life. So what I thought would be really fun for us is if we took a look at a rhythm track that I built that has a bunch of different Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath elements in it, his power chords, his movements, chord progressions, single note riffs, all those kind of things. And then go back and then we're going to create a solo over the top that uses a lot of the signature style things that Tony Iommi would use. Now, Tony Iommi, just like so many other guitar players, is an incredibly versatile and talented guitar player. And I can't even begin to try and break down everything that he does in his world of playing, but I'm going to go for the heavier side of things right now. So let's take a look at the rhythm track here, and of course you can watch this as many times as you need to get a feel for it, and when you're ready to start breaking it down, come on back and we'll talk about it. All right, so let's break this sucker down, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm kind of taking a couple of different licks of Tony Iommi and I'm kind of melding them together into one thing here with this. That thing right there, okay? Now you'll notice my tone, I don't have a massive amount of distortion on there. It's pretty mid-rangey. Again, trying to achieve something like a classic Sabbath sound, although Tony Iommi has had, a number of different kinds of guitar tones. But I'm just going for kind of a classic sound here. So the first thing we're gonna do is start off with a paranoid kind of lick, and then move into a bit of an Iron Man kind of lick, both at the same time. So what we're gonna do is start off on the 7th fret power chord on the 5th string, and what we're doing is this little hammer-on. So I'm pressing on the 7th fret of the 5th and the 4th strings at the same time, and then I'm doing that little hammer-on to the 9th fret of the 4th string. And I wanna do that 3 times. Okay, and then I'm going to move into this little blues pentatonic lick which Tony Iommi most certainly uses quite frequently. He's a very pentatonic player, and there are some other notes that he does add in, and we'll talk about those, like this one right now with this blues note. That guy right there in the middle. So we're going to put those two things together, and we get... All right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into some power chord chugging here. And I'm really combining 3 different songs at this point. I'm taking some of Paranoid, I'm taking some of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and I'm actually taking some of a song called I by Black Sabbath, which was a little bit later, and just sort of, or even Heaven and Hell, and kind of meshing them together. So let's take a look at what we got here. I've got, again, the E power chord, the 7th fret of the 5th string, and I'm going to strum it, and then right away I'm going to start palm muting. So remember, when you're palm muting, it's really important to find the perfect spot for your wrist to be, your little karate chop part of your hand, so you're getting the perfect palm mute, okay? Now, it's different for everybody, but if I move too far forward, you'll notice the string dies. And if I move too far backward, I'm not getting a palm mute. So I have to adjust to find that perfect spot. See, if I want a little less palm mute, I can move back a little bit, and if I want it a bit tighter, I can move forward. And I mean, that's, I don't really think about it when I'm playing. I don't think, well, what does Tony Iommi do? I'm just trying to kind of match the sound that I'm hearing and the feel. So I've got a fairly tight palm mute happening right here. Okay, so I've got... And then what we're going to do is we're going to move down to the 3rd fret power chord. We're just going to play a series of power chords on the 5th string. We're going to play 3, 5, 7, which is the pinnacle metal chord progression right there. 3, 5, 7, if you were going to be in the key of E minor in this case. Those 3 chords are like, they define Judas Priest and, Iron Maiden and all those kind of bands. And of course, Black Sabbath is no different. So we've got 3, 5, 7. And then I'm going to go 9, 10, 12. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. And then I go back and start all over. So I have... And remember, you got to start palm muting right away. Don't hold that and then start going. Just go ba-da-da-da-da. So it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And you're just, on the first one, you're strumming. And then on the and, you're already palm muting. 1 and. And when you go down to do that palm mute, the nice thing is that you can kill all these other strings so that strum stops. See, I'm not changing anything about what's happening with my left hand. I'm just going across the strings, getting ready to do my palm mute. And what I'm doing in the process then is deadening out all those strings so they stop ringing. Here I go. Okay, now you're going to do that. I believe I did that 4 times just to develop a melody, and you could imagine like Ozzy or somebody singing over the top of that thing, or Ronnie James Dio or whoever it might be. So then what we do is after we come off of that little thing, we're going to do this little, we're just going to play this power chord, which is kind of Iron Man-ish. Then we're going to go to the 5th fret, and then we're going to go back to the 7th fret, and we're going to do that. We're going to keep palm muting. Then we do it again. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so again, just developing a little bit of a change there. A lot of the artists like Tony Iommi and a lot of these bands, certainly with the metal genre and prog and all those kind of things, progressive music, it's kind of like what you're doing is you're building different blocks and then you're putting all those blocks together. Okay, you're going to repeat blocks, you're going to create new blocks. Well, right now, we started with our initial block, which was this thing, which was a combination of both chord and single note. But the nice thing about that is it's creating its own melody, right? It's something really catchy, and that's something that I really need you to understand about a lot of the bands of, the 60s and certainly the 70s and the 80s and so on, is you could identify the song by the riff that you heard. It wasn't just the singer or something like that, although that could make a difference, but you knew the song by the riff. So if you did... it would be something that would be easily identifiable as a lot of the Sabbath songs, and again, so many artists are. So it's important to think about that. You're not just playing chords, but you're trying to create some sort of melody or some sort of motif, it's sometimes called, where people would go, oh, hey, I know that song, right? So then we're moving from that into a section where somebody could sing over the top, and that's where we're going... We're just creating this openness, right? That palm muting underneath, stuff like that. And then you'll notice when you listen to the bass track as well that I recorded, the bass track, like in bands like Sabbath, the bass a lot of times was doing almost exactly the same thing that the guitar player was doing. It would change here and there, but he would do a lot of the same things. And that's what really gave it its heaviness, is you had both the guitar player and the bass player kind of playing that same thing. They're chugging through the same thing. Okay, so now we come off of that part and we went into this little break. 2, 3, 4. We do it again. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what I did was, just so you know too, when I'm playing power chords, sometimes I play power chords with my first finger and third finger, and sometimes I play power chords with my first finger and my pinky. I'm pressing on the same strings, I'm just pressing on fifth string and fourth string, but I just kind of move back and forth between those sometimes. So as you're watching me and you see my fingers, if you're playing it a different way, don't worry about that, and it's perfectly fine. If you're playing a 3-finger power chord where I'm only playing a 2-finger power chord, again, don't sweat it. You still want to play this so it's comfortable for you. The idea is the riffs themselves. And if some of the things that I'm doing certainly help you, then that's awesome. But you don't have to feel like you have to do them exactly the same way I do, because a lot of times I switch them up from time to time because I'm not really thinking about how I'm playing it with my fingers. I'm just sort of playing. So just something to think about. All right, now we're going to go into this. That little thing. Kind of an ominous little riff, and it's still pentatonic. We're playing an E minor pentatonic. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a hammer-on from 5 to 7 on the 5th string with my first and third fingers, and then I'm plucking that 7 again. Then I'm going to go to the 4th string 5th fret with my first finger and pluck that note. And then I'm going to go back to the 7 on the 5th string. And then I'm going to add a little bit of vibrato. If you don't want to add it, it's no big deal. A lot of times Tony won't add them. He'll just go, and he'll just leave it. By nature, I tend to add vibrato on things like that. So again, it's up to you if you want to add it. Or if you just want to leave it static. Okay, so I'm doing a hammer-on, then I'm picking that 7. And then I'm picking the 5, back to the 7, and then optional vibrato or not. Now we're going to just drop down the pentatonic scale here. We're going to play 5 on the 5th string. We're going to play 7 on the 6th string with our ring finger. 5 on the 6th string with our first finger. Then we're going to move back 2 frets to the 3rd fret, pluck that, and then open. So it looks like this. So I'm sliding, but you're not hearing the slide. But to get from point A to point B, obviously either I have to lift my finger and move it, or I have to slide physically. I don't want to hear the slide, but I do have to get from this spot down there, okay? So instead of going and lifting it, then I'm getting space, I'm sliding. I'm just timing the slide so you're not hearing that slide sound, or at least trying to anyway. So here's what the lick sounds like.